All right. Woo! Who woke up excited this morning that you're going to come to this talk? All right, I was the only one, right? Jumped out of bed, ready to talk about, yeah, you got food, right? That's how we bribe you guys to come. We feed you. No, but honestly, you guys all came so you could hear me talk about everything you never wanted to learn about chiropractic, huh? I get it. It's light outside. All of us are adjusting for daylight savings, so some of us are tired. There's multiple different things that we could be doing right now, but all of you guys, you're here. And what that tells me is you guys care about your health. This is important to you. It tells me that you guys are action takers. And in our clinic, we know that you guys are the ones that are going to get the best results. Okay, you guys are the ones that truly care. And we created this workshop because you guys still have a lot of questions. You have a lot of questions about your health, a lot of questions about chiropractic, what to expect, what do we do when you adjust you, what's going on. So we designed this workshop to actually answer those questions. So one thing, me and Dr. Heller, we go to a lot of seminars and conferences, and one thing we realize is we get more out of that talk or that discussion if we can engage with the speaker, right? So the other thing we're going to encourage is that you guys engage here. This is a discussion. We want you to actually get something out of it as opposed to just listen to me talk. The other thing that we notice is I get way more out of a presentation if I know who I'm talking to, right? So if I know a little bit about the speaker. So I want to tell you how me and Dr. Heller actually got into chiropractic and why we set our clinic up the way that we do and why we serve the way that we serve. So I grew up in a split family. Grew up in Lyons, Colorado, so a small little mountain town in Colorado. My family, or my parents, they split when I was really young. Okay, so great relationship with my father. Love the guy. We still have a wonderful relationship. However, when they split, he moved 800 miles away to Iowa because that's where all my family is. That's where my mother and father met, was in Iowa. So I was raised by my mom and my two sisters. So I was raised in a household with all girls. Now I'm in a household with all girls. I got two daughters and my wife. Even the dog's a girl, and I work with all girls. So I don't know what it is, but the Lord attracts girls to me, I guess. I was raised in a very natural family. Okay, a very natural household. My mom was a very natural-minded person, and she instilled that in me at a very young age. So when I say natural, it's about as natural as it can get. Okay, so we were all born at home, never went to the doctor, never took any medication. I did have a surgery later in high school for a knee injury, but other than that, no surgeries. Yeah, we ate out of the yard. My mom had a garden. If we had any type of meat, it was usually venison, some type of wild game that somebody either shot or gave to us, or we harvested ourselves, or wild rabbits that we raised. So we literally almost lived off the land in this small little mountain town that I lived in.
That fits Lyons.
Yep, exactly. So I was a very, very natural-minded kid, and even though right now that's conducive to the culture there, I realized when I went to school, holy cow, I was a lot different than my peers. Okay, so I never went to the nurse's office. I didn't know what the nurse's office looked like. I hardly ever had a sick day, but if I did have a sick day, what we did is we didn't take any medication. What my mother did is she made sure we were hydrated, she put us to bed, and we got over it. So from a very, very young age, we had the philosophy that, hey, the body's smart. Okay, it's a self-healing, self-regulating organism, and as long as there's no interference to that process, by all means, this body does pretty good. Okay? So as I continued through school, I realized that I really love sports. So in my mom's household, we didn't have TV, we didn't have internet. Obviously back then we didn't have cell phones, so I was always outside playing. So when I got into school, it transferred to sports. And eventually I got into high school, and it led to my love for football. And somewhere along the way, I took a really hard hit. And what happened is I injured my back. And it was to the point where I couldn't run, I couldn't breathe, I couldn't actually hit somebody or take a hit. And when you're the running back on the football team, you know, yeah, that makes things really, really hard. So the natural-minded kid, I am literally doing everything I possibly can the natural way to try and alleviate this back pain. So I'm having people massage me, I'm having people stretch me, I'm doing different exercises to try and alleviate this. And eventually it gets to the point where it's like, I just want to play. I want to get back out on the field, so I started taking over-the-counter drugs like ibuprofen, Tylenol, just so I could get out there and practice, just so I could play. I didn't want to lose my position. It was like the most important thing in my life at that point. So eventually a family friend says, hey, why don't you go see a chiropractor? He treats our family really well. Anytime we're banged up, we go in there and see him, and he usually fixes us up. So I went in, and what I had going on was a rib subluxation. Now, traditionally, when somebody clinically they have a rib subluxation, it responds really quickly. Okay, so very simple articulation. Usually, you know when it happens. It's an acute trauma, and it responds really fast. Okay, typically the signs are you have back pain, you can't breathe, it hurts when you run, etc. Everything that I had going on, clinically, we don't see it that often. So one adjustment, and I'm literally, you know, like 100%. So I think, wow, this is pretty cool. Come for a follow-up. That's the extent of my chiropractic experience. Didn't tell me anything, didn't tell me what he did. He just adjusted my spine and sent me on my way. I didn't think anything of it. I was extremely grateful for the guy. So as I finish out my sports career, I realized, okay, there's more to life than just sports, and now I got to figure out what the heck to do with my life. So I go to undergrad, major in sport and exercise science, minor in chemistry and coaching, and then I figure out, holy crap, what do I do from here? And then all in the meantime, I meet my wife in undergrad down in UNC in Greeley, and she tells me she's interested in chiropractic after she finishes with school. I'm still kind of lost on exactly what I want to do, so I go to my mentor at the time, which was one of my older sisters, and she's like, you know, you want to do something in the health field, why don't you look into chiropractic? You know, you liked this guy that helped you, he got you back on the playing field, why don't you check into it? So I start reading about chiropractic, and I read the philosophy and their approach on healing and health, and I'm like, holy cow, this is me, this is how I was raised, I just never got adjusted from a young age. So me and my wife, we both go to chiropractic school, and I go to chiropractic school thinking I'm going to be a sports chiropractor, right? That is what helped me, that's what got me back on the playing field, and that's really all I knew of chiropractic at the time. So while I'm there, I get into the rehab department, which is really well known in the area. Very, very nice department down there at Palmer College. And I'm working on people, and I'm helping them with pulled hamstrings, and recovering from surgeries and whatnot, and helping them increase their performance. And then I have this epiphany, and I realize, is this really what I want to do? Okay? So I'm going to rewind. Where I went to school was in Iowa. Okay, so I got to go back to where my dad lives. And the whole time I'm there, I developed this great relationship with my father and the rest of my family that's there. But the whole time I'm there, I'm seeing this lifestyle that they're living, and I'm seeing how it's panning out for them, which isn't very good. So I was raised by my mother, super healthy, natural-minded lady. I go see all my other family, and they live in a completely different way. And while I'm at school, and while I'm studying to be a chiropractor, I'm losing people of heart attacks, and cancer, and chronic lung disease. And I'm having family members that are being diagnosed with diabetes and other health conditions. And I'm sitting here thinking, I want to be a sports chiropractor? I want to help this guy shave 1/10 of a second off of his 100-meter dash? I mean, is that really that important? I mean, what if I help change somebody's life and, you know, help somebody live long enough to where they can walk their daughter down the aisle, right? Or they can hold their grandkids. Hey, that's the type of doctor I want to be. I want to help people live longer, healthy, more vital lives, as opposed to just patching people up and helping them perform better. Okay, I want to help people perform better in life and continue to perform better. So that's really the path that we have taken, and that's why we've gotten to where we are now. What I like to do is I like to start this workshop off and literally show you the two different lifestyles, or the two different lives that I saw before me. The one that I grew up with, and then the one that I got to see at my time in school with the rest of my family.
What will your last 10 years look like? Will you be quick enough for a game of tag with your grandchild? Strong enough to embrace every moment? Will you grow old with vitality? Or get old with disease? It's time to decide.
Okay, so drastic difference between those two people, right?
Yeah.
So I grew up in this. This is what I saw as normal, right? And then as I went to school, this is what I was seeing, and it was the norm, right? And for the majority of the population, that is the norm. We know 4 out of 5 individuals in this country are going to either die or suffer from a chronic illness. Okay, so this is the norm. However, this is what is normal, guys. Healthy is normal. So when we were at school, I decided, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to help make the shift from this to this so people can realize that we're designed to be healthy, and hopefully we can help a whole bunch of people in a whole community avoid this chronic illness downward spiral, okay, and teach them what true health is. And by no means am I going to stand up here and am I going to tell you that all you have to do is get adjusted and you're going to be 100% healthy. That's not it, right? We know that there's more to the health equation than that. But at the same time, you can be doing all of those things that are extremely important and extremely healthy, from exercising to taking your supplements to eating correctly to having a good thought life. But if you don't have a healthy spine, you don't have a healthy nervous system, you're never ever going to reach your full potential. Okay? So I'm going to explain that. The science supports that over and over and over again. So I'm going to spend some decent amount of time there actually discussing that. But this is where I feel like we are right now as our healthcare system. All right? Does anybody in here watch movies? Anybody know where I got this one from? Emily, look familiar? No? Trevor, you ever seen this movie?
I don't think so.
This guy's Denzel Washington. Give you a hint. Has anybody seen the Book of Eli?
No.
No? Nobody's seen the Book of Eli. Okay. So this is 30 years post-war. Okay? And as I see this, this is the state of our health. This is the state of our healthcare in this country. And if we continue to do what we've been doing, we're going to continue to go down this path, and this is what we're going to see. So in this movie, here's what Denzel Washington is trying to do. He has a copy of the Bible, and there's literally, they burned all the books, right, in this land, and there's really no people except for thieves and a few slaves to some higher powers, okay? And what he's trying to do is he's trying to get this Bible, right, this message across the country so they can preserve it and make copies and give it out to the masses, right? This is the state of our healthcare, and I honestly feel that me and Dr. Heather and the chiropractic profession has a message that is the saving grace for the health of this community and literally our planet. And if we continue to follow the current model that we're following, we're in for a world of hurt. And we're going to keep getting a lot of what we've been getting, which is a lot of illness and a lot of sickness. So, by no means do I want you to think that we're anti-medicine or that we're anti-medical doctors, okay? Because that's not the case. That couldn't be further from the case. There's a time and a place. So, here's the analogy I like to use. I want you guys to close your eyes. Wait until you get that bite in though. Close your eyes. I want you to picture your house, okay? So whatever that is, maybe it could be your dream house. Now, I want you to think of that house as your brain and your body, all right? Now, go ahead and open your eyes. Now this is your house, all of a sudden, okay? We all know that there's things that might be out of our control that can cause a disaster, right? A crisis. Let's say lightning strikes your house and boom, you got a fire. Who are you going to call for this?
Fire department.
The fire department, right? They are best suited for this crisis situation, right? Sometimes stuff happens, and this is a case of that. And when the fire department comes, what 2 tools do they have to help this house?
Water.
They got water. So they got their axes, and they got their fire hoses, right? And as long as they get to this house on time, they can bust in those windows, bust down those doors, they can soak everything, right? And hopefully save this house, right? Good thing? Great thing. Thank God for the fire department, right? But what if this is your body, right? What if your body's in a crisis? What if you get in a car accident, right? That it was just an accident. You had a major head injury, right? You broke a bone. You lost a lot of blood. You're in a crisis situation, right?
You need a doctor.
Right. Who's the best that's going to serve you in that situation? Right? It's probably the emergency room. It's that medical profession. In this scenario, they save lives every single day, and they're stinking heroes. And the 2 tools they have to do that are drugs, right, and surgery. Okay? Just like the fire department has the axes in their fire hoses. But could we agree there are some cases where we have a crisis, but that crisis could have been prevented? right? For instance, maybe let's say a heart attack, right? We know that lifestyle induced the majority of the time, so there's multiple things we could do to reduce our risk. Same thing with this house, right? We can make sure that we have this house inspected before we buy it, right? Hopefully our real estate agent point us in the right direction to get inspected, right? And hopefully the electrical,
The roofing company will make sure it's got a good roof on it.
there you go, right?
And that one.
We want to make sure this house is sound, right? We want to make sure that there's no water damage that could potentially lead to an electrical issue. We want to make sure the electrical's up to code, the appliances are up to code, right? And in that particular case, to make sure that this house is safe and that it is completely up to code, ready to go, who do you think is best for that job? Right? It might be your inspector, right? It might be a general contractor. It might be the homeowner themselves if they're that savvy. So it's going to be some guy like this, a handyman, to actually go in there and make sure stuff is good. Make sure we can do everything we can to reduce the risk of a fire ever happening. This is where my profession steps in. Okay? When there's a crisis, when there's, let's say, a heart attack or a car accident, don't come in here. There's little I can do for you, right?
Adjusting my back doesn't fix my heart.
Right, and if you need stitches, right, if you have a major head injury, they're the place to go. And they do an awesome job in that scenario. However, we are here to create lifestyle changes, and even by adjusting the spine, we can create changes in the body to hopefully ever prevent us from ever even having one of these crises. The other thing is, once we have one of these crises and the fire's put out, who do you think is best to actually fix that house up? To redo the drywall, redo the roof, right? To redo the framing and the electrical and all that. Get it back up to code. Is it the fire department?
ServPro.
What's that?
ServPro.
ServPro?
Yeah.
Fire restoration specialist.
Okay, there you go. And they're going to have multiple tools, right? And they're going to have multiple means to get that house back up to code and running functioning, right? Running functionally well, okay? That's also where we step in. Would it be silly that once this house, once the fire got put out, would it be silly if the fire department came in there every other week and just sprayed it down with water to make sure it didn't start on fire again? Right, that's laughable. But every single day we do that with our body, right? We take drugs to prevent a crisis every single day. And that's not the answer. What we got to do is we actually got to restore the health and function of that body just like we do with this house. So we always come from the philosophy that if we're sick, if we're displaying a symptom or a condition, it's because of one of two things. Either we're toxic in something or we're deficient in something. And that could be multiple different things. That could be movement, it could be exercise, it could be stress, right? It could be nutrition. It could be that we're not having proper nerve supply as a result of a problem with the spine. So when we look at health, what we want you guys to know is we're not sick because of a lack of drugs or too many parts if we follow that toxicity or deficiency equation. And when we look at these drugs, by all means, they work, right? So if you take a muscle relaxer, it's going to relax your muscles. It's not going to do anything to correct the cause of the problem, and it's going to do nothing to actually make you healthier, okay, ever. So I am not anti-medicine, not anti-medical doctor. I just think we misuse and we abuse that system. Okay, very important part of our healthcare system. But here's the other thing: we're calling that healthcare, and really it's sick care. And we're using it as healthcare, and that's when we get into the problems that we have. All right, very, very important, but it's not healthcare; it's sick care. And when we look at that system, that trauma, crisis intervention care is about only 15% of what we use that system for. The rest is chronic illness. Okay, so I want to talk about how big of a crisis we're in. We're in a huge healthcare crisis. So we just heard about this because of the election, right? And this is all we heard about was the healthcare crisis. It's not a healthcare crisis, it's a health crisis. I don't care whose plan we follow, neither one of them are the solution. What we really need is we need less sick people, and that's the solution to the problem. It's not the care or the system, it is the actual health of our society that's the real problem. When we look at the #1 killer in this country, it's cardiovascular disease. So it takes nearly 1 million people from us every single year. And we have the best researchers, the best doctors in the world saying this is a lifestyle-induced illness. Okay? However, when we look at a condition like heart disease, what's our typical treatment? Right? Somebody might have a heart attack, and in that instance, yes, ER, medical profession, right? They might have to intervene and do a surgery. And they saved your life. That's a good thing. But then after that, what do they typically do?
You're on medication.
Put you on a medication for the rest of your life, right? Here's this diuretic, here's this beta blocker. Good luck. We know this is lifestyle induced, but we're not going to address that at all. Just take this drug, right? And when we look at those drugs,
If that don't work, we'll give you another one.
yeah, which might lead to taking another one. The problem is when we look at these drugs, these side effects sometimes are more scary than the actual condition themselves. So has anybody in here heard of Vioxx? So it got taken off the market, and there's a boxing class over there, so if you hear music and screaming, that's what it is. So Vioxx got taken off the market in 2004, and the reason being is it was directly attributed to 60,000 deaths. It was actually causing things like heart attack and stroke. What Vioxx was is it's a COX-2 inhibitor, okay? So, or a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. What it does is it helps with pain and it helps with inflammation. So if you had surgery, boom, you might have gotten Vioxx. If you had arthritis, boom, you might have given Vioxx. One of the main things that they gave this drug out for was teenage girls with painful menstrual cramps, okay? And as a result, we lost a lot of people because of that drug. 60,000 people.
Wow.
That's the city of Cheyenne, okay? One drug. And they yank multiple drugs off the market every single year because of the consequences they have. And straight out of the Journal of the American Medical Association, they admit we have a drug problem. Over 100,000 people every single year die from properly prescribed drugs. So that doesn't mean that it was misused or abused or not taken correctly. It means, hey, you had this condition, you got the right drug for that condition, you took it exactly how you should have, in the dosage, at the frequency for the duration that you were supposed to take it. And as a result, we lose 120,000 people every single year. So when we look at the United States population, what do we got, like 320 million or something like that? Closer to 325 maybe. But 120,000, you might think, well, doc, that's really not that many. So I'm going to put this into perspective. It's a lot. So 120,000 people every single year is the equivalent of one of these jumbo jets that can carry upwards of 300 people on it, falling out of the sky every single day, and everybody on board dying. Okay? Anybody ever been on a cruise? They're a lot of fun, right? And those ships can house a lot of people. It's the equivalent of one of these big old ships sinking in the middle of the ocean every single week, and everybody on board dying. Now, if one of these planes was falling out of the sky every single day, or one of these was sinking in the middle of the ocean every single week, would you dare put your family on one of these planes or put them on a cruise ship?
Some of them anyway, yeah.
So yeah, we wouldn't, right? And in fact, if we looked at this scenario, there wouldn't be a cruise line industry, there wouldn't be an airline industry, right? They'd be under so much scrutiny, so much investigation, they'd be bankrupt,
Yep.
right? However, most people never even look at the product insert that comes with those drugs before they take it. They don't even know the risk. And they're blindly prescribed those and they just trust their doctor. So one thing we have to do if we're going to get out of this health crisis is we've got to realize the drug problem we're having, and we've got to create some awareness around it. Because 70% of our population is on at least one prescription medication. That is crazy. How much of the population do you think is receiving chiropractic care?
7.
About 4. So when we look at the nation, about 4%, less than 5%. Yet 70% are on at least one drug. Okay? So when we look at this, it's not just a health problem, right? It's an economic problem. We heard about that as well, the economic crisis that we're in. Our country is in trouble. And part of it's because of the health problems that we have. So the U.S. spends $3 trillion every single year on this sick care model. Anybody have an idea how much 3 trillion is? How about a trillion? It's a 1 followed by how many zeros?
7.
12.
6. Oh, 12.
12.
Oh, 12.
It is a million millions. It's literally like an unthinkable fake number, right?
Yeah.
There's no reason you ever have to count to a trillion or write a trillion, right? It's almost unthinkable. If you started counting now, it'd take you 32,000 years to actually count to 1 trillion. We spend 3 times that every single year. That's almost 10 grand for every man, woman, and child, and it's almost 18% of our gross domestic product in this country. What we spend on our health care, or what we spend total, almost 18% is on our healthcare system, our sick care system. And when we look at the household, over 50% of all personal bankruptcies are the result of health issues and medical bills. So it's not just bankrupting our country, it's bankrupting our households, okay? 75% of the world's pharmaceuticals are consumed by the United States. Do you guys know how much of the population we account for when we look at it globally?
30%,
Only 5.
25.
5%. We're 5% of the global population. We consume 75% of the drugs. Insane, right? It's absolutely insane. So you think, okay, we spend 3 times as much as any other country. We have the greatest research facilities. We have the greatest access to care, right? We take more drugs than anybody else. So, I mean, we've got to be healthier than everybody else, right? So the World Health Organization did a study in the early 2000s, and they looked at multiple countries. And they singled out 39 industrialized countries, and when they did that, we ranked 37 out of 39. And the Institute of Medicine, they did a study just a few years back, about 4 years ago, and what they found when they looked at 17 richer nations, we ranked 17 out of 17. The Commonwealth Fund did a study 2 years ago, and we were 11 out of 11. So we're doing pretty bad, pretty poor, even though we spend so much. And the CDC in 2009 came out and said, for the first time in the history of man, children born after the year 2000 are not expected to live as long as their parents. So what they're saying is life expectancy is going down. I'm not okay with that. And that's why we've designed the clinic that we have and we do the things that we do, is because I want to see these kids grow up to be healthy, right? Live a long, healthy, vital life, right? And not fall into this sick care system. So all I'm saying is our current model and the way that we're using it, it's failing us. Okay, and it's failing miserably. So I could stand up here and I could show you research after research and statistic after statistic, but you guys know what's happening with obesity in your country. Is it going up or is it going down?
It's insane.
It's going up. What about heart disease? Is that going up or is it going down? Right, if we look at behavioral disorders like ADD, ADHD, autism, are they going up or are they going down? Autism rates are now 1 in 49. That's crazy. That is insane. And there's things that have changed in our environment that we need to realize that are creating these issues. When we look at autoimmune disorders, right? MS, the diagnosis of MS now is through the roof. These conditions are going up, and you don't need me to tell you that. You can just see that in our community. So I'm going to say if we want to get something different than what we've been getting, we got to do something different than what we've been doing. All right? And where we drop the ball is we seem to think the pain and symptoms are bad. And they're not. They're important, right? It's a warning sign. So a common and deadly misperception is that if I don't have any pain, doc, I'm good. I don't need adjusted. I don't need to come in. I hear that all the time. You know what? I really like what you do. However, you know, I'm not in any back pain or anything, so, you know, when I am in back pain, I'll come and see you. It's a very, very dangerous perception on health. All right? We can't just base our health off of symptoms, okay? If I drop a brick on my foot, right? If I walk out of this door tonight and I trip and I break my ankle, I'm going to be in pain, right? And is that a normal, healthy, natural response if I'm in pain in that situation? Absolutely, right? I just created a lot of tissue damage. I need to heal. My body's got to figure this out. I can't just go walking on a broken foot or an open gash, right? And if so, I could actually get an infection and then it can lead to something more, right? So this pain is very, very important. However, we have people in our community right now walking around with no signs, no symptoms, no pain, but they have cancer. They have heart disease, and they don't even know it. And we all have to agree that they're very, very sick. Okay, so we cannot base our health off of symptoms alone. It tells us very little about somebody's health. So, movie buffs.
Patrick Swayze.
Yeah. Do we know what happened to Patrick Swayze?
Cancer.
Cancer. So, yeah, he had pancreatic cancer. So this is a prime example of how we look and how we feel as a result of how we function. Okay? So when we look at Patrick Swayze, does he look good there? I mean, come on, ladies, give me a whistle. He looks good there, right? Do you think he feels good there? Yeah, in the 90s, guess what? He was voted the sexiest man alive. And then this was him shortly after he died, or shortly before he died.
Seriously?
Yeah, that's the same guy. That's the exact same guy. In Patrick Swayze's case, before he had any signs, any symptoms that something was wrong, he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer and metastasized through his body, and it was too late. There was nothing anybody could do for him. However, if you talk to an oncologist or you talk to a cardiologist and you say, you know, what's the scoop with a tumor? What's the scoop with heart disease? I mean, how long does it take for that to develop? They're going to say many times in order to actually detect a palpable sized tumor, it could be the better part of a decade. It could be 10 years just to get to that point. So in the 90s, when he looked like this and he felt like he did, that process very well could have been going on in his body then. Okay? So he could have been sick then and not even know it. When we look at heart disease, statistically speaking, 50% of the time, what do you think the first symptom is?
A heart
More
attack.
saying, yeah, heart attack.
Well, once you have the symptom, you're having it.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's a heart attack. It could be death. That could be your first sign that there's something wrong going with your ticker. Okay, that's not made to scare you whatsoever. It's just made to show you that we can't base our health just off symptoms alone or pain. Okay, very poor indicator of our overall health. We've got to base it off of function, and there's objective measures for that. So when we look at pain, it's no fun to experience. Nobody enjoys pain, right? But it tells us that something has changed. Something is wrong. It requires attention. So the last thing we need to do is just take a drug to cover it up, right? That is the equivalent of if your house is on fire, right? We're in that crisis. If all you did was take the batteries out of the smoke detector so you didn't have to hear that sound. That's the equivalent, okay? And people do that every single day. And those drugs are having a serious consequence on their health, all right? When we look at pain, symptoms, all of that, it's important. It has its function. I just fed you a meal, right? And I know there's some weird stuff with Chipotle not too long ago where there's contaminated food, right? Foodborne illness. A lot of people got sick. So I hate to even make this joke, but if I fed you bad food, right? If I fed you salmonella, contaminated food, and you got sick, right? If you vomited, if you had diarrhea, if you spiked a fever, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
That's a bad thing.
It's actually a good thing, right? Your body says,
You're
holy
getting rid
cow,
of it.
yeah, there's something wrong here. I got to get rid of it. So we puke, expel it as quick as we can. We might have diarrhea. We actually spike a fever so we can kick up our immune system and get our white blood cells out there to fight whatever infection or invader is in our body. But typically what would we do, right? Most people would take something to suppress the fever, right? They'd take an anti-nausea or something like a Pepto-Bismol to keep them from puking or keep them from having diarrhea. And in all reality, that's a normal, healthy, natural response. And the reason that we can experience any pain, that we can have any symptom, is the direct result of this thing. So the nervous system. So if you guys have spent any time in our clinic, you realize that we take the nervous system pretty serious, right? It's like what we do. It's our master system. It controls everything. It literally is how we live our lives. You can't see, hear, touch, smell, right? Have a relationship with somebody. You can't go for a run. You can't have a muscle contraction. You can't secrete bile or stomach acid or any of those enzymes you need to digest that food without a properly functioning nervous system. Okay? So this thing literally runs the show. It is very, very important. And when we look at the nervous system, here's an oversimplification. So we got the brain, right? Up here it's our CPU. It runs our entire body. And an extension of the brain is the spinal cord. It comes right down the center of our spinal column. And branching between each bone in our spine, we got nerve roots. And they're going to branch out and they supply every single organ, tissue, and organ system in our body. So the way our body works, our brain sends a signal out to all these organ systems through that nervous system. These organ systems pick up information in our environment, send it back to the brain so we can make an appropriate and adequate response. If there's any breakdown in that flow of information back and forth from brain to body and body to brain, that's when we run into an issue. If we have this freely functioning nervous system, right, we have the greatest chance at expressing 100% health. So the two things I want you guys to understand is number one, like I was raised and like all of us know in this room, and if we look at any research that will support this, the nervous system is the master system, right? We know it controls and coordinates everything in our body. If I had to quiz you guys and say, what do you think the very first thing to develop in utero, right? What is that baby already, like if there's one thing that baby is developing right now, what is the very first thing that is developing?
It's nervous system.
Nervous system, right? Why? Because it controls everything else. Nothing else can develop without that nervous system. Okay? It's the very first thing to develop in utero. Everything else depends on it. Okay? And the other thing is, our body is a self-healing, self-regulating organism. If you break a bone, it's going to heal. Right? We might cast it to immobilize it, but your body, it throws down certain bone cells, we form a callus, and that thing heals. if we get a cut, right, we don't need Neosporin or hydrogen peroxide or a Band-Aid. By all means, it's going to scab up and it's going to heal. Okay? If we have a cold, if we have a flu, by golly, guess what? Our body knows exactly what to do and we're going to recover from that. If we go for a run, I don't got to think about increasing my heart rate, increasing my respiration, increasing the oxygen to my muscles, right? Good thing my body knows how to do that. When you eat a meal, you don't got to think about what enzymes to secrete, how to churn up and break down that food, or where that nutrients needs to go. But thank God that the body knows, right? Super intelligent system. And the reason it knows how to do all of that is because of this nervous system. So the conclusion we make as chiropractors is, hey, if you interfere with this nervous system, then you're going to interfere with the body's ability to heal and regulate on its own. So that's what we try and do, is remove that nerve interference. That very thing that can protect, or does protect, that nervous system can actually cause interference to that nervous system if it's not treated correctly. Okay, so the suit of armor can actually be the cause of that, the spinal column. And a great example is this guy. So we all know Superman, right? Do we know what happened to him? So he had a horse accident, right? He fell off his horse and he broke his neck. He broke the top 2 bones of his neck. So C1, C2 is atlas. And the compression on his brainstem and his spinal cord and the inflammation that resulted from that was so great that this poor guy was paralyzed from the neck down. Okay, so he was a quadriplegic. He couldn't breathe on his own. He had to be on a ventilator. He struggled with multiple lung infections. He couldn't have a bowel movement on his own. He had to have somebody push on his abdomen to remove the contents of his colon into a colostomy bag every single day. And he eventually died from cardiac arrest. And all of it was due because of the interference that he had to his nervous system. It shut his entire body down. So when we look at Christopher Reeve's case here, this is an extreme example. Okay? But what we're dealing with day to day in the clinic is the same thing to a lesser degree. Right? Abnormal positioning of this spine and the spinal column can create stress to this nervous system, and even though it might not manifest like this, it might manifest like something else, and it might even be something that we can't feel or see. Right? So I'm going to talk about this. I know you've heard it, but I'm going to go into really big depth here. Okay? I'm going to get really sciencey on you guys, because this is important. So, here you go, Trevor. Take a set of blocks. You can give one to Jacqueline there. You go, Patrick, Steve, Christine, and Emily. There you go. Okay. That's a spine. But it's just a chunk of a spine. Okay, so 3 segments. So what I did, took a chunk out of the spine. I got 3 segments. Okay, so that's what you're holding there. So we do multiple things in our life, right? We might have a skiing accident, we might have a car accident, we might, just be hunched over a bicycle day in and day out, or hunched over a desk, right, and add chronic stress to our spine. And what can happen is we could jar the spine out of its normal healthy alignment. So what I want you to do is I want you to take that middle segment that you got there, and I just want you to push it to the side, or twist it, or push it backwards, whatever you want to do. All of those rubber bands around that spine represent the soft tissue that surrounds the spine, okay? Our ligaments, our tendons, our muscles. What do you notice is happening to the soft tissues in that case?
Being pulled in a direction.
Right, they're being stretched, they're being strained, right? We're adding some pressure to them. So we're going to create some tissue damage, right? And when we create tissue damage, a normal, healthy, natural response is inflammation. But we got to realize when we're creating inflammation around the spine, we got nerves that exit that spine. Right? So if we've got a lot of inflammation around those spinal joints, we're going to irritate these nerves that actually exit at that level. Okay? If that goes undetected, uncorrected, this is just a perpetual process. Okay? And we continue to damage the tissue, we continue to have inflammation, and we continue to irritate the nerve. Okay? Simple explanation of what happens with a subluxation. Okay? And that is the explanation for, hey, let's say I have a stomach problem. Oh, well, I see that you have a T6 subluxation. Let's adjust that, and all of a sudden our stomach problem resolves, right? But that's not always the case. Sometimes we can adjust a C6 and somebody's plantar fasciitis goes away, right? So why the heck does that happen? It has to do with the other portion of this subluxation process that we've never talked to you guys about, okay? So, with the subluxation, we have a misalignment, tissue damage, inflammation, and nerve irritation. But the body's going to try and do everything it can to correct that, right? Because it's not dumb, it's really smart. So many times we're going to have a muscle contraction. Okay, we're going to have a spasm. So it's going to hold that segment in place so that we reduce that tissue damage and we alleviate that inflammation and that nerve irritation, right? Makes sense. Brilliant response. But if that continues to go undetected or uncorrected, that spasm stays there. That shortened muscle is going to permanently become shortened. We're going to have a contracture, and we're going to start changing the histology of the tissues. So we're going to attract fibrosis and fatty tissue, scar tissue, to the muscle itself. And what's going to happen is we're going to eventually do the same thing to the joint itself. So we once had a freely functioning, freely moving spine, and because we had a subluxation that went undetected and uncorrected, over time it resulted in a fixation. So not only do we have nerve irritation now, but we have a segment in the spine that is not moving correctly. Big deal, right? So I'm going to explain that. Here's our normal healthy spine, right? And we should move in every which direction, right? Every joint plane. When we have a subluxation that eventually turns into a fixation, which is part of the process, we have a segment that does not move, okay? So you notice when you guys come in, do we kind of do a little dance with you and like move you around and see if we're actually moving? That's what we're checking for. Why that is so incredibly important is because 90% of stimulation and nutrition to our brain comes from movement. Okay, so it comes from all the receptors of our body and actually being in motion. So have any of you ever been to a nursing home? Okay, has anybody seen that poor person that's confined to their chair or wheelchair? And what we noticed is not only do they have the most rapid physical decline, they have the most rapid cognitive decline too. And it's because they're not moving, they're not getting that fuel and nutrition to the brain, okay? So 90% of nutrition and stimulation of the brain comes from movement. Majority of that, movement of the spine, okay? Because we get that from all the little receptors that are in the postural muscles of the spine. All the little receptors that are in the joints of the spine. So we got a lot of joints here. We got 24 individual movable segments with joints back here, joints with the ribs. We got joints between each disc level. Right? So we got a lot of joints here. There's a lot of information that goes to the brain from movement of the spine. So if we have an area of this spine that's locked up and is not moving, what happens is we have a constant barrage of noxious stimuli to the brain. It's called nociception. Okay? It's almost like static or fuzz to the brain if you want to think about it like that. And what we miss out on is normal proprioception or mechanoreception to the brain, which acts as that fuel and nutrition to the brain. Okay? One of the reasons we feel so good when we exercise is we're getting some good motion out of the spine and the rest of the body. Okay? So if we have a constant barrage of noxious stimuli to the brain, and we have a constant deficiency of proprioception or mechanoreception in the brain, the overall result that we see is a stress response in the brain. Okay? So do you guys remember high school health class? When we have the stress response, right, we label that into different categories, the autonomic nervous system, and that goes in the sympathetic nervous system, right, that fight or flight response, right, that's the stress response. So when we're in that fight or flight response, what are our bodies prepping us to do? To move, right, to either fight or flee. So if I'm in the alley back here and some guy attacks me, I got to either figure out how to get away and run the quickest 100 meters of my life, or I got to stand my ground and I got to fight, right? And in that time, what
Is that the guy I just heard about?
yeah, I think so.
Wow.
That's why I use that example. This has happened before. No, I'm kidding. So if we're constantly stuck in that fight or flight state simply because we don't have proper movement of the spine, here's what we see. We see an increase in blood pressure, right? Are you going to need an increase in blood pressure if you're going to increase your activity level? Yeah, absolutely. We're going to increase our heart rate, right? We're going to increase our blood lipids, right? We need energy. We're going to increase our blood glucose. We need that fast energy, right? We're going to increase our clotting factors. Kind of sound like a heart attack. So if you're stuck in chronic fight or flight stress physiology, if you're chronically subluxated, could it contribute to a heart problem?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay? The other thing that we're going to see, if I'm in that stress physiology, fight or flight, I don't need my immune system in that particular situation, right? I don't need to fight an infection. If I survive the fight, by all means, yes, then I'm going to need it. But in that moment, no, I down-regulate my immune system. Okay? Do we have some immune system problems in this country? I don't need my digestion in that moment, right? Pretty silly to digest my food when I'm trying to get the heck out of Dodge, okay? Do we have a lot of digestive issues in our country? What about fertility? In that fight or flight response, do I need my reproductive organs? No, it's the last thing I'm thinking of, right? So we're going to down-regulate that as well. What about concentration? Am I going to be able to do long division when I'm in that chronic, fight or flight state, right? If I'm running from somebody or I'm in a fight, am I going to be able to do a math equation? No stinking way, right? Do we have a lot of learning disabilities and things like that in this country? Okay? So chiropractic might get really cool results with a multitude of different things. It's not that we have a magic button for something. All we're doing is removing this nerve interference, adding normal motion to the spine so your body can function like it's supposed to. And then your body can heal and regulate on its own.
Take care of itself.
Okay? Yeah. We're just removing that interference so yeah, it can take care of itself. Okay? So every single time we adjust you, not only are we trying to improve the structure of a specific, or the alignment of a specific segment, we're putting normal motion back in that spine. And we're having a direct effect on the brain when we do that. The thing is multiple people think, hey doc, I don't have any pain, I don't need to go see you, right? We know that only 10% of the nervous system is able to perceive and pick up pain. You can have a subluxation, you can have a nervous system problem, you can have a brain problem, and not have a sign or symptom whatsoever. Okay, but you still have a problem, just like with cancer, or just like with heart disease. Okay? Make sense? So that's why we get so jazzed coming into the clinic and actually adjusting people. We know that it actually affects your brain, okay? It restores normal physiology. So here is a picture of that entire process. I know that you're not going to be able to make sense, but I just need you to know that there is an extreme amount of science behind this. Super cool. So I always like to ask everybody, if you had to choose, I hate to put you on the spot, Charlie, but if you had to choose, you want a back problem or you want a brain problem? The obvious answer is neither, but if you had to choose, which one would you pick?
I guess a back problem.
Obviously, everybody would pick a back problem, right? Nobody wants to have a brain problem. I mean, this thing's our master system. It controls everything. But what I'm telling you is this back problem is it is a brain problem, okay? So when we look at subluxation and we assess your x-rays and we do our exam and when we adjust you, we're not just fixing your back, okay? This is a health problem. We're addressing a health issue, all right? And that's why chiropractic gets such cool results with a multitude of different things. And that's why typically we're such energized people. Man, this is exciting. We got a message that we need to share with everybody. And what causes these subluxations? It's life, right? It's your slips, it's your falls, it's your car accidents, it's your poor posture, your poor sleeping position, the excessive sitting, right? The technology. It's that skiing accident, that car accident, falling off a roof, whatever. It's life. It's a combination of both. And it could start right here. This could be the very first subluxation, is that birth process and delivery itself. So many people are completely weirded out that we check so many kids and we check so many newborns and infants, but this is why, right? I checked my kiddos, both my kiddos were born at home. No intervention whatsoever. I still checked them as soon as they came out, placenta still attached. This can be a tough journey no matter what, okay? And I want to show you. Don't believe me, just ask my wife. This is tough. All right, here's your baby. This is a 7.5 pound baby, okay? But there's not much in her legs or arms. There's nothing in her head. So she feels more like a shot put. But I promise I weighed the sand. She's 7.5. So, normal average baby.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go ahead and pass her on. That's not how you pass your baby. Okay, now when you have a baby like that, a brand new baby, what is one thing people always tell you to support their what?
Their neck.
Right. Why? Because they don't have the proper musculature to hold it up. They just kind of flop around. They have an underdeveloped musculoskeletal system. All right. So, my turn. I'm just going to take your baby here, Emily. If I did this, would that make you mad?
Yeah.
Okay, really mad. So, we know
That's how
that
they get the baby out.
this is 7.5 pounds of pressure of pull on this underdeveloped musculoskeletal system. Okay? When we look at certain interventions, right, such as vacuum, forceps, C-section, or even excessive force on doctor's part, many of those procedures are using upwards of 35 pounds of pressure to pull this baby out. Okay? So we can create this first spinal trauma, this first subluxation in this birth process and delivery itself. I don't want to point fingers. I just want to check that kid's spine right away to make sure they get off to the best start possible. Okay, make sense? That's why we check kiddos. All right.
Is it scary for you to check babies?
No, babies, for the most, I mean, they don't have they aren't completely ossified. So, I mean, they still got a lot of cartilage.
And they don't know what's coming, so they
They
don't.
don't- and when we look at an infant, they don't have the muscle tone, right? They haven't had issues for as long. The other thing is their joints are nice and wide open, so it's very easy to make a correction on a kiddo as long as we check them early enough. Okay? So yeah, it's not scary, it's very light force. It is not the same amount of force that I would put into a grown man that's had 30 years of damage on his spine. No way.
Okay.
Many times it's literally enough pressure to blanch your thumbnail or your fingernail. Okay, so just to create that change in color. So here's our mission in this clinic. First of all, we want to identify these subluxations. We realize, hey, there's health consequences to having this spine problem, right? And we do that through specific analysis. We take x-rays, we look at your range of motion, we do thermography and muscle scans, we do a multitude of different things to figure out, hey, is there a problem and where is it? And then when we figure out where the problem is, we give you a program of care to do our best to correct that problem, okay? So I know many chiropractors in town and many chiropractors in this country, they practice different than we do. And it's more like, hey, I have a backache, I'm gonna go see my chiropractor, I'm gonna tell him it hurts here, he's gonna adjust me here, good, I'll see you next time that hurts right there, right? And that's what the majority of people know as chiropractic. That is what I knew of chiropractic, okay? That is what I did, right? And my chiropractor never told me what it was that he was doing. He never told me this message, right? If he would have told me this, I would have been in there every single week getting adjusted, and I honestly think I wouldn't have torn my ACL and blown out a knee. Maybe I would have been a two-time state champ in wrestling instead of a two-time runner-up. Maybe I could have broken a school record in track, right? Maybe I could have not had as many infections or illnesses, etc. Right? Maybe I could have done better in school, right? When we look at performance. Only if he would have stinking shared this message with me, right? And used it as a lifestyle success strategy instead of just an expensive aspirin, okay? So we give you a program of care. If you were gonna go to the gym, Patrick, right, and you decided, I wanna be a bodybuilder, I wanna get big, I wanna get buff, would you just find the guy that works out at your same gym that looks pretty big and get some tips from him every once in a while? Or would you hire somebody that knocks on your door at 5 in the morning and says, Patrick, here's your workout, here's your nutrition, right? Here's your rest days, this is how I want you to do this, here's how you're gonna taper, right?
Yeah.
Out of those two, who's gonna help you achieve your goal?
The guy I hired to do that.
Right, okay? So that's why we're here. We're here to help you along the way. We're here to help you subluxate less. We're here to educate the community on healthier lifestyles as well, okay? So when we look at everybody's care in here, we got to realize that it's your responsibility, right? Nobody cares more about your health and your family's health than you, and we can't trust the government and our insurance to bail us out, okay? We got to make it a conscious effort. It's got to be our responsibility. My kiddos' health right now is there in my house. Their health is my responsibility, okay? Nobody else's. We're just here to partner with you guys to help you achieve your health goals. And how we do that with you guys is this protocol right here. So obviously right now we need adjustments in rhythm, okay? To create that momentum, to get the spine moving, to move more in that healthy direction, right? To relieve the stress off of that nervous system. And then, in the meantime, we got to figure out your bad habits. What are you doing day in, day out to perpetuate your subluxation pattern, right? Is it sitting all day? Is it the technology? Is it your bed, right? Is it the way that you have your seat in your car? We got to troubleshoot that stuff so we aren't just running in circles and chasing our tail, okay? So your guys' homework, identify your bad habits that you're doing day in, day out that can be contributing to your pattern. And then later along in your care, we give you corrective exercises to help strengthen and hold the spine and hopefully get you to hold an adjustment as long as possible, okay? So that is the protocol and the equation that we use. So before I let you go, I want to tell you a few success stories. So many of you, has everybody seen Sherry's story? So every month we have a success story of the month, and we like to share it in this workshop. So Sherry came to us with chronic neck pain. So she's been dealing with neck pain for years, chronic lower back pain, and she had chronic radiating arm pain, right? And being a daycare provider, it got to the point where she couldn't even like pick up and care for kids. She had enough. So she decided that, okay, yeah, I'm going to try this chiropractic thing out and see if it works. So we put her through a course of care, did a detailed exam, figured exactly what was going on, then put her through a course of care. And yeah, she had a subluxation in her neck. She had an L5 subluxation that needed to be corrected. So after a course of care, no more lower back pain, no more neck pain, no more radiating arm pain. So now she feels like she's got her life back. She can finally function. She can do her job. So it motivates her, okay? And it motivates her to the point where she completely changes her lifestyle and she loses almost 50 pounds. And she quits smoking. You think that's a huge win for Sherry?
Yes.
Right, do you think that that simple thing, that adjustment that just helped with that back pain, supposedly, that created this shift, do you think that that adjustment helped Sherry get on this path to where she's going to live a longer, healthy, more vital life? Absolutely. Okay? And what about my buddy Brent here? So Brent's an 8-year-old boy, and I love this story. He came to us as a last resort. Unfortunately, like most people do, because they don't know any other options, right? They know drugs and surgery and the medical profession. So his parents, being the loving, caring, compassionate people that they are, they bring Brent in as a last resort, and here's what's going on with Brent. He has a widespread global rash. Okay, so he has a rash all over his body. It doesn't have a particular pattern. There's no trigger. And he has widespread joint pain. All right, so every single joint in his body hurts, and they don't know what the heck is going on. It's so bad to where this poor 8-year-old boy is bedridden days. There's days that he can't go out and play. There's days that he has to miss school. There's days that he can't go out and play with his friends because he's in so much pain. So this 8-year-old kid feels like he's 88 years old. Pretty sad, right? So his loving, caring, compassionate parents, the only route they know is the medical profession. So they go to their provider, and he's like, I don't know, this is pretty fishy, doesn't make much sense to me. It leads to a specialist and another specialist. Eventually they're in Children's down in Denver. Okay? So they have some of the best doctors down there, some of the smartest people trying to figure out Brent's case. And here's what they come up with. They come up with, all right, there's something going on with his immune system, and we don't know exactly what it is. So they diagnose him with a non-specified autoimmune disorder. Okay? Now, when we look at the medical profession, they got 2 different treatments, right? They got drugs, they got surgery. So Brent got a drug, right, to try and help with this immune dysfunction. And that drug led to another drug, which led to another drug, which led to another drug and another drug. This 8-year-old boy was on 5 medications. Wow. He still has a widespread global rash, and he still has global joint pain. So literally his parents are like broken. They're devastated. They don't know what the heck to do, right? Because the smartest people that they know can't figure out what the heck is going on with their boy. So they live in Colorado. They drive 2 hours to our clinic. We do a detailed examination on Brent. We find out he has a subluxation of his atlas, okay, the top vertebra in his neck. He has a tremendous amount of inflammation around that area, creating irritation on his nervous system. Right? So we put him through a course of care. Even though they live 2 hours away, they followed our recommendations perfectly. And after 2 months, this kid has no joint pain, no rash, and he's off every single medication. Okay? And that's awesome. I love that story. Unfortunately, they moved and they're in Oklahoma. He's still under regular care and he's still doing awesome. Here's the thing that crushes me. There was a long period of time where Brent had a less than optimal life, right? And there was a long time where that was a huge drain on his parents and his family and on their relationship. You can only imagine what that did to their family dynamic, right? So my question is, what if we would have just checked Brent from the day he was born? Would this ever have even happened? Could we prevented all of that treatment, right? That unnecessary treatment? Could we have prevented any type of, turmoil or stress within their family? And could we have prevented this from happening altogether? Yeah, I think we could have. And that's why we need to check kids, right? We need to get them checked from the moment they're born and maintain the health and integrity of their spine and nervous system throughout life, okay? Now, I know as we go through this, there's multiple things that I said that you probably thought of somebody, okay? You thought, holy cow, I wish so-and-so was here. They need to hear this message, right? Somebody that's sick of the drugs, sick of the medications or the surgeries, etc. We want to help those people, but we're only going to be able to help those people if they know that there's another option. So the only thing I ask you is to help us spread the message about chiropractic. So I gave each and every single one of you, if you're a couple, I only gave you one, I gave each of you a book. Okay? So if you have any more questions, read that book. There's a ton of good information there. When you're done with it, please just give it to somebody else that you think can need it. if you ever know somebody that you want to send into the clinic, because you guys are action takers and you came to this workshop, what we extend to you guys is referral cards. So we don't tell everybody this, but hiding behind the desk, if you ever want to refer somebody in, we have a referral card that keeps that first visit from exceeding $45. So normally day to day when people call into the clinic, that new patient experience, it's $250. Okay? So if you're thinking, all right, I need to get my son in here, can I have one of those referral cards? Just ask the ladies at the front desk. Okay? And we'd be more than happy to help them out. See if this is going to be their solution. If this is going to be their answer to their health problem. So thank you so much, guys, for caring about your health and for being here tonight. I truly and honestly appreciate it. If you have any questions, by all means, I'll stick around afterwards. Other than that, have a good night.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yes, absolutely.
This is one I want you to do for the office next.
Okay, cool. Will do. It's my favorite one.
Good.
Oh, you don't want to take that fixation stick, huh?
I'm sure kindergarten.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the blocks too. Honestly, I steal these from the waiting room, so I do gotta get them back. Or else the kids don't have the blocks to play with. I go through a lot of rubber bands.
Yeah.
Alright, thank you. Oh, there they are. I was gonna say, Trevor, you hide one of those in your car?
He wants to take them home and play.
You gotta give it back.
Some of the stats you started with, are they in here?
I don't believe so, because that book is a little bit older.
So, did you send those to me?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I just want to do the teases before you guys actually come to kind of,
Okay.
I mean, there's some figures in there, just like, wow.
Yeah, it's very staggering. So, and I can even send you the links and the research as well, so you can have that.
Good deal.
All right, we'll see you guys.
Where you want the trash?
There should be a trash can just on the other side of the door there. And don't forget about your bike.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you.